This time, we take a look at the alien brawler film, Pacific Rim. And along the way, we ask, are the Jaeger names even cool? Who would you drift with? And finally, is there any character in this film who isn't boring? Let's find out on this episode of Force-Fed Sci-Fi. Hey, Force-Fed Sci-Fi fans. So this is your co-host, Sean. And before you start this episode, I just wanted to give you a brief little explanation with the audio. We did have to record through via Skype for this one with Chris, so his audio may be a little funky. So just a little warning before you start the episode. If you slog on through, go for it. If not, that's okay. We'll have more coming up soon. So go back, listen to your favorites, or take a gander at this one. Either way, we appreciate you for listening, and give us a review and a shout out on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Thank you so much, and enjoy Pacific Rim. Hey guys, welcome back to another, I guess this one you could call like bodacious episode of Force-Fed Sci-Fi. My name is Sean Michael Culp, and along with me is my friend and co-host.
I am Jaeger pilot Chris Rupp.
The Jaeger, baby. You know, for the name Jaeger, I bet if this could be like an easy drinking game. Like every time you hear Jaeger, you do a shot of Jaeger. It's a horrible drinking game nonetheless, but a drinking game it could be.
You would be so drunk by the end of this movie because I feel like it's such a rich film to build a drinking game around. And
yeah.
I think Guillermo del Toro I think he crafts his movies with a drinking game in mind as he goes along. Same thing like with Quentin Tarantino does with his movies. I just feel like they're all perfect for drinking games.
Yes, they have the little tropes and things that you could form. That's how you know it's a good director and a great writer. Jaeger, though, I'm sure they took shots at Jaeger. They had to. It's in the name. But people, Pacific Rim is this week's film that we're going to talk about, so super excited. I know I told Chris in the last episode I haven't seen it. I waited a long time until finally now, so I'm pretty excited to jump into this bad boy. So as always, let's start off with the synopsis, Chris.
All right. So in the near future, giant alien monsters are sent to destroy our world via a portal that opens in the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. And in response, humanity bands together to build giant robots to combat this massive threat. And really, that's the entire film. It's very simple. Aliens are sent to our world. We realize that our weapons are useless in terms of stopping said giant alien monsters, and we are forced to build these robotic monstrosities to combat said giant alien monsters.
Yeah, I took it as it's like if Transformers and Godzilla were meshed in one, and they just decided to battle each other out. This is pretty much what it is. Like a big monster movie.
In a lot of ways it is, because you can definitely see a lot of influences that Guillermo del Toro had in terms of old kaiju films like the Godzilla films, anime that he would watch, and other robotic shows and films that he would watch. I would have to think that Transformers, at least the early cartoon version, was a huge inspiration in terms of the looks of the robots.
Oh, I'm sure. They look very similar. And then plus, like, at the end, when they have the little swords come wheeling out, I just go, whoa, that's Transformers for you, baby. But he did take a lot of Asian influence, I think, for sure, with this. But, you know, that could just be also to help pad the box office as well. Who knows?
Could be. I mean, he was certainly the driving force behind a lot of the creative vision behind Pacific Rim, and Guillermo del Toro had a ton of clout prior to making this film because he had directed both the first two adaptations of the Hellboy series. He did Hellboy 1, Hellboy 2, and then in between there he did the massively successful Pan's Labyrinth. I don't know if you've ever seen that film.
I love Pan's Labyrinth. That's probably one of my top 10, 15 films of all time. It's just such a rich film with that chews up the scenery with like props and just it's incredible. Great storytelling. And I think that's kind of like a staple with Guillermo del Toro. He usually is a very practical effects type of guy, mixed in with gooey special effects. With this film, definitely a lot of special effects.
Oh yeah, there's obviously with the giant robots, you're not going to be able to do those practically, so those are pretty much all CGI. But then there's a very solid mix of, I would guess, puppet work, especially when we see the kaiju corpse and all kinds of animatronics, especially with those skin lice, I guess, that they're examining after the kaiju is killed in Hong Kong.
Yeah. It's very rich with who he is and the staple of his, I guess, his stylistic for filmmaking. Like we said, Guillermo del Toro. He's definitely one of my favorite directors in the more recent years, for sure. Who else is in? Yeah.
Well, another staple of Del Toro's films is this ability to have these great casts in every single one of his films. And starting, and Pacific Rim is no exception. The starring role is played by Charlie Hunnam, and the main character of Raleigh Beckett. And I think American audiences are now more familiar with Charlie Hunnam as the lead character on Sons of Anarchy, which the first few seasons of that show are amazing, and then the latter seasons not so much. But so Charlie Hunnam was definitely popular, and then this film really kind of gave us an inkling as to what he could be, because he was certainly handsome, he had leading man qualities, and he was the front runner at one point for those eventually awful 50 Shades of Grey films before another actor was cast. And
Are you serious?
yeah, everyone thought for sure that Charlie Hunnam was going to take on that role of Christian Grey, and then he passed on it.
God, well, smart. I don't know if that's a smart move or not. I mean, I have no idea who Charlie Hunnam is. I've never seen him in anything until this film. So take that for what you will. I'm not as cultured with the TV arts. But I do know Idris Elba is in this film, and he kind of was the name. Him and Charlie Day and Ron Perlman, obviously, because it's a Guillermo del Toro film. Those three guys, I knew who they were in the cast and was like, oh, okay. Yeah, Idris Elba is probably one of the most... He's my favorite, one of the most proficient actors, I think, in the 20s and the 2000s for sure. He's just such classically trained and voice just so deep. He's great at whatever he does.
Yeah, Idris Elba is incredibly versatile, and just before doing this, he was on The Wire, he was on Luther, and really sort of rising to American prominence. He was in the Thor films for a little bit before he got a bit too big for his britches there. He was in Prometheus the year prior, and then he had a very memorable run on the American version of The Office.
He's great. I love the guy. He's so just fantastic as an actor. And though Charlie Day, I would say, was pretty surprising, which I know like around this time, 2012, 2013, 14, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia really took off in mainstream. So we saw Charlie Day randomly appear in some movies. But this, to me, was like such a weird casting. I was like, why Charlie Day? His voice is so high.
Yeah, but he's able to pull off these quirky characters so well. I mean, I think now he's kind of getting pigeonholed into this character type, but he had played kind of the dim-witted friend in that workplace dark comedy of sorts, Horrible Bosses, where he's just a total dimwit in that as well.
Yeah, that was kind of this era where he just like started appearing in movies. Unfortunately, you are, like you said, he is pretty much pigeonholed into playing that type of guy. But I mean, hey, if that's what he does, he's doing his comedy. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, so I'm sure he's happy with that. They seem to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, they look like they do. But in addition to this male-dominated cast, we get Rinko Kikuchi as Mako Mori.
Which I don't know who that is either.
Because she is immensely popular in Japanese cinema, and she broke through, I want to say in about 2006, following her performance in Babel, that film. And she was actually the first Japanese actress in 50 years to receive an Oscar nomination for that film.
Oh, that's rad. I know she's in what is it? Kumiko, the Treasure Hunter? That film that came out in 2014. It's basically about this person, an urban legend surrounding like this fictional ransom money that's buried in the snow from the film Fargo. And it's just about her like traveling to like America and all these places looking for this like ransom money because she watched the movie Fargo. And I thought that was pretty interesting to me of a film, but I just never saw it, and then I always forgot what it was called. But now that I know she's the person, I'm totally gonna watch this because it just looked so indie, right up my alley.
Yeah, she kind of doesn't venture often into American cinema anymore. I think the last major film she did was very, very bad film with Keanu Reeves. It's called 47 Ronin.
Yeah.
Yeah, based off the legend from Japan. And she plays a witch in that film, and that film's a dumpster fire if there ever was.
I've only heard negative things from that film, but I'm sure if we ever wanted to expand to that genre, we can review it because it just looked terrible. Everyone that has seen it told me it's horrible.
So bad. It's not worth watching.
You saw it?
A couple of times, yeah, because this was...
A couple of times? Why?
Yeah. It was on, and my dad has horrible taste in films, so he had it on.
Yeah, I understand that. My dad's the same way. He'll watch like Jason Segel films, and I'll be like, or Steven Seagal films, and I'll be like, why? He's so bad. Even now, he's so fat. Why? This isn't good. But I don't know. If it's action, I guess he likes it.
As I guess most men of that age do.
Exactly. Oh, man. And like we said, Ron Perlman is in this film because it's Guillermo del Toro, and he cast Ron Perlman in pretty much everything.
Yeah, if Guillermo del Toro is making a film and there is a role for Ron Perlman to have in said film, he's going to be in the film.
Oh, yeah. It's like with Denzel, when Tony Scott was alive, he always cast Denzel in his films. I think Samuel L. Jackson to Quentin Tarantino, it's always how it goes. The director usually has someone that they always cast.
I mean, it works for Perlman and Del Toro, so I'm not against casting Ron Perlman in any film. I think he's fantastic.
Yeah, he is great. Very underrated. And he was in Sons of Anarchy as well.
Yeah, and it's odd that he and Charlie Hunnam actually don't share any screen time together.
I know, right? It's like Perlman's in it. He's not a blink if you miss it, but he's only in it, I think, like 2 or 3 scenes. He's not like a super heavy hard hitter character. I think he's the black market guy that ends up getting eaten, which is great.
There's actually I guess, mid-credit sequence where Ron Perlman survives that. I don't know if you stuck around to watch the credits.
No.
Yeah,
No.
You see him cut through the belly of that baby kaiju, emerge out. He still has his sunglasses on, and he looks around and goes, "Where is my damn shoe?"
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. So how did this film get started? I saw it like began roughly in February of 2006.
Yeah, if you look through the credits, you'll see story by Travis Beacham. So while he may not have been involved with the entirety of the screenwriting process, he was really the impetus for all of this. He conceived the idea of the film back in 2007 when he visualized a giant monster fighting a giant robot, and then wrote a script treatment for it. Guillermo del Toro got involved, and del Toro was initially going to adapt an H.P. Lovecraft story, At the Mountains of Madness, but he heard about Beacham's treatment and was like, I'm all on board for that, because this sounds right up my alley.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a couple of conditions for making the Lovecraft story. He wanted to do a hard R rating on it because it's a Lovecraft story, so there's going to be a lot of horror and gore involved in it. And he wanted to have a big budget for it, but the studio wouldn't allow that, so they canceled the Lovecraft film and offered Pacific Rim to Del Toro.
Okay. Yeah. And I think Del Toro was kind of more responsible for injecting the elements of the brevity of the film, like the guilt, the survivor's guilt and all that. Because a lot of his films have a lot of emotional weight to them.
Yeah, it seems like every character in the film is dealing with some type of past trauma from something that happened related to the kaiju coming through the rift there. And whether it's Raleigh losing his brother or Mako losing her family, there's some type of tragedy that sort of drives these characters forward.
Definitely. And did you know with this production of this film, Tom Cruise, I guess, was going to star? Tom Cruise, why?
Because he's literally considered for everything. I don't know what it is. Like every single casting conversation starts with, "Well, can we get Tom Cruise?"
And is there enough running scenes for him? And unfortunately, I think that's why he dipped out of this one, because he's like, "What? I have to be stuck in a robot? I can't run or be shirtless? No, I'm out."
So it's really the robot running and not me. Well, I don't want to do that.
Can we make the robot look like me? No. I'm out. Get out of here.
Would you watch that movie, though? A giant robotic Tom Cruise fighting a bunch of alien monsters, though?
Yes, I would. That would be an amazing movie. I mean, he's in Mission Impossible already, so hell yeah, I'd watch him battle robots or battle aliens with a robot that looks just like him. That's just beautiful. Someone has to make this.
That makes $1 billion right there. Let's make that movie.
Billions, I say. So yes, they, I guess they trashed the H.P. Lovecraft idea, and kind of Guillermo del Toro took over, and here we have it. I think they started filming around 2011, if I read that right.
Yeah, I guess this was a very tight schedule that they had to work with. They only had about 100 days to shoot the film, and since Del Toro is a massive control hound, he doesn't utilize a second unit. He worked 17 to 18-hour days or 7 days a week and actually created a tiny group of actors and crew that he could pretty much just have them wake up at 4 a.m. every morning and boss around before the actual schedule commenced.
And I guess he did an approach where he let the actors kind of improvise. It was a much looser style, but I mean, I guess I could see some of that with Charlie Day's scenes as a scientist, but with the main cast, not really. It seemed very action-esque dialogue to me.
Yeah, I definitely get the sense that Charlie Day and Bern Gorman, who plays his scientific counterpart, where I guess it definitely got the sense that they were allowed to more freewheel and improvise and say somebody like Idris Elba or Rinko Kikuchi were.
Yeah. And he also cut, I guess, an hour of film, if you saw that.
Yeah, I'm curious as to where that cut is, though. I want to see the 3-hour long cut of Pacific Rim, where either the fights are extended, or we get more character development, or if there's just more fights. Period. Where is that film?
So he said it was basically the footage explored more of the characters and their arc, but he needed to find the balance, so he had to scale down the footage to basically have the arcs edited to very minimal requirements, because he wanted the film kind of to float with younger kids too, which, I don't know, for me, the film, once we'll get into our ratings, we'll talk a little bit more about it, but I did feel, at a lot of moments, I was kind of bored in the film, where the arcs, a lot of people had such weight to their issues, but it almost felt action-esque, where there just wasn't enough time invested into showing their sadness, or there just wasn't as much juicy dialogue to really rein me in. So I would be down to see the 3-hour film of this.
I remember the big selling point of this film wasn't any sort of characters to latch onto, but the whole spectacle and visuals of giant robots fighting giant aliens. And for the longest time, that's how I've always told the movie what it is to everybody who hasn't seen it before, and it really got me curious as to whether or not these types of robots were possible.
Yeah.
In short, as cool as it looks, and as much as we'd want them to be real, unfortunately, they're not possible.
No, God, no. The radiation and like the amount of money that would take to build one of these things, not only build it, but have it function, especially like with this weird mine technology where you have to like link together and melt it. No, you can't drift. That's what I was thinking while watching this. I'm like, why don't they just like nuke the monsters or something? But
well, because then you have to worry about radiation everywhere if these monsters are coming through the breach, every 8 months or so.
that is true. Radiate the entire world, which unfortunately Idris Elba's character, he suffered from radiation poisoning.
Yeah.
That was his big arc or something.
I mean, but from a practical standpoint, these Jaegers are hundreds of feet tall, and the bigger you create something, the weaker it actually becomes proportional to its body weight. So think about when you increase an object's size, you're increasing its length, its width, and its depth, and would therefore just require an unfathomable amount of energy just to move, and you're weakening the entire thing by doing so.
Exactly, which is that's why I kind of was laughing when I saw them fight and all that. So I'm like, oh, we'll just build a bigger one to deal with the bigger monsters. Like, no, bigger is not always better. Just have something super efficient that's small and quick that could just cut them through. But, the spectacle of the movie is more interesting watching a giant transformer.
You mentioned the construction of these things, and even that would require an insane amount of material. I mean, this article I read on space.com talked about some materials that could be used if these giant Jaegers were going to be built, and it mentions titanium. Titanium is an incredibly strong metal, but it's also too heavy. It also talks about beryllium would be a great choice, but turns out it's actually toxic to humans in dust form and can actually kill them.
Oh.
And they also mentions carbon reinforced plastic, but again, you would need a ton of material to do so, and the weight of all this would just weigh down these robots, and it would not make it possible for them to move around and be as nimble as we see them in the film.
No, there's no way. I mean, our budget deficit is already crazy enough. Think of these things would have to cost $1 trillion at least for one. Just, no, not possible. Even the technology to drift is just insane to me.
Yeah, I'm curious as to how that was developed. Because it's just like, it's drift technology developed for fighter pilots. Like, how though? Like, there's a pilot and a co-pilot. I don't think exactly have to be in each other's heads full on to know what's going on. I think you just have to be able to work well together. That's it.
Well, there wouldn't be a movie, Chris. Because they had to have the cost. Or else then it would be so Transformers-esque where it's just like one guy in the big bodysuit. But think about the drifting.
We got that movie already. We got the movie about fighter pilots. It's called Top Gun.
Exactly. So they didn't want to. That's why they probably want Tom Cruise. They're like, hey, can do this flying, maybe with a machine that moves and thrusts.
Do you want to do a futuristic Top Gun, Tom? I think we're all in on that.
It's coming out. But I think the idea of drifting, that would just be interesting. Like, who do you know that you work so well with that you would be able to work this technology? And I'm sure there's so many like partners out there, like boyfriends, girlfriends that will be very upset with a lot of people's answers. Chris, who do you think you would be able to drift with?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like you said, that could be a loaded question depending on who you ask. But
yeah,
I think the bottom line is you have to have some sort of connection, whether or not it's intimate or familial type, or as Raleigh mentions, like, you may not get along, but you fight well together, which I don't know how that works. So maybe like tennis, like Venus and Serena Williams could be drift compatible with each other or something.
Oh yeah, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, for sure. Kobe, Shaq.
Maybe not Kobe Shaq because they had feuds that just turned into rap battles.
Early Kobe, Shaq before they got pissed.
Maybe Kobe Bryant and Pau Gasol would have been drift compatible.
There we go. I think there's actually a couple people that I think I would be able to drift well with in the military. Definitely, for sure. I even think one of my brothers I would be able to drift with because my younger brother and I, Kyle, we fire on all cylinders when it comes to like sports and teamwork games. So I'd be down with that. Hey, I'd be down with that.
It's this strange alchemy that we see in the film in terms of who is drift compatible with who. Right. Because we see in Crimson Typhoon, we see it's Chinese triplets that are drift compatible with each other, and then we see in Striker Eureka, it's a father-son team, and then when the father gets injured there, we see Stocker Pentecost go in with the son. It's like, your father was an amazing pilot. I'm sure I'll be all right with you. Like, how do you know for sure, dude?
Yeah, right. How do you know? You can just strap in there. I knew you. I was your father's cousin's grandson's roommate in college. We should be fine. It's like, what?
Yeah, it's there's just too much strange alchemy going on there to just accept that these random assortment of people could be drift compatible. And I mean, I get Mako and Raleigh being drift compatible after their very sexy fight together. Let's just get that out of the way. And this movie is teeming with just underscored sexiness.
You think that was sexy? Underscored sexiness. I did not get the sexiness, but that's okay. It was more predictable for me with that with them battling each other. But do tell me.
Well, I mean, really the only female character that's prominent in the film is Mako. And the relationship with her and Raleigh is just underscored with this sexual tension that's really not explored until really the very end of the film, where they embrace on that escape pod, and before they're about to engage in almost certain death, he mentions, I was never really good at expressing my feelings, which is basically screenwriter code for saying, I don't know how to write a love story here.
Exactly. We're just going to assume that all men can express how they feel. What a trope. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, they had the creepy looks, like, through, what were those called? Like, the ship holes? Like, the door holes or whatever? Whenever they would get undressed, one would creepily be staring. And I'm like, I don't think that's a page out of the How to Woo said person.
Yeah, those door holes are way too big to allow for any sort of privacy. You can basically stick your whole face in those things and just see someone's entire room. That's insane.
It was just no. Maybe they took a page out of James Cameron's writing, like how to write female characters.
Yeah, probably. I will say this, though. I mean, Pacific Rim does an amazing job at establishing the rules and the lore of this world. I think the world building in this film is some of the best that we've seen in doing this show.
Yeah, this movie is almost set up like a video game. It could be something that you could play. They establish, like you said, the rules, what's happening, which is nice. I did like the setup for this because it's early, right when they introduce the film, and they're setting it all up. The monsters are here. This is what's happening. We try to take them down. We have to use these Jaegers, et cetera, et cetera. It was great setup.
Yeah, I think that prologue where we see the kaiju coming through the breach and Raleigh's and Yancey's initial fight with the kaiju is one of the best openings, at least I've seen, where it does not let up. It lets you know right away the world that we're heading into and how we got here. And we kind of see the events set forward for the rest of the film. We see the kaiju is no longer should be underestimated as an enemy, which Raleigh kind of ends that prologue by saying, then we kind of got complacent. We turned the kaiju into cartoons and things like that, and yeah, that's rule numero uno in the art of war is like never underestimate your enemy.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. I do think the kaiju as the villains, I think they were great, though it would have been nice to have them speak, a villain as opposed to the drama just with the people. Because that's a tough sell with the world. I think it almost reminded me of like Mass Effect, if you ever played that game, with the Reapers.
Never got into that game, no.
It's pretty much basically these things come from a different like universe, and they come and they purge the universe every certain amount of years, and you have to fight them. And so that kind of, when I saw the Jaegers, it reminded me very much so of the Reapers in Mass Effect, for all you video game nerds out there. So there you go. Have it as you will.
But it's such a rich and lush world, and to me, and I don't know how you felt about this, I thought the black market aspect of the film in introducing Ron Perlman was the most interesting part of this world, to me at least.
Yeah, that was really cool how they sold the different parts. It's Ron Perlman, man. He sold the character. It was great writing. I loved every element of that, how they had to use Charlie Day's character. I definitely agree with you. That was when kind of the film... Well, Charlie Day's character in and of itself, he was, I think, the highlight of the film, at least from my perspective when watching it. All of his scenes were really captivating and kind of took you.
Well, it's also indicative of how during a time of global crisis, there are always going to be people who try to take advantage of the situation. And
yeah,
we're even seeing that now, living during a pandemic. All these alerts about scams are, people pretending to be Social Security or the government saying, we have your stimulus check, or we're developing a contact tracing program. So while I don't think it's as illegal as that as we see in the film, we just see, hey, we're going to take kaiju corpses and grind up the bones to make an aphrodisiac. We're going to take the crap and sell it to farmers and things like that. So yeah, very kind of sort of altruistic in this film, but in the real world there would be actually just terrible people taking advantage of others during a time of crisis.
Well, you can never waste a crisis. And whenever there's something good, there's always someone there to exploit it for evil means. That's usually the rule of thumb with everything. Not to be on such a dour note, though. How did you think of Raleigh as our hero?
At times he's rather unconvincing.
Okay.
We see him and his brother, be all badass in the opening, and then they get defeated. Yet they still defeat the kaiju, and yet Raleigh leaves his life and goes and helps build that wall in Alaska or wherever he's hanging out.
Yeah.
And then it's like when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we don't see him like have any sort of like real hero moment, I would say. Like the Jaegers had the hero moments. He's just the pilot behind the Jaegers. It's the Jaegers that do all the heavy lifting. Pun intended there.
Yeah, and I think that's like kind of what I was saying with the characters. Without a villain character there that you can really learn from, or, like the Joker, or some person, like a human being playing a character that's the oppressor, that's when the onus of everything must fall upon the cast and the good characters, the heroes, to really provide the audience with such a rich, detailed backstory, but also compelling conflict between them, because we know what the villain is. So now we have to find some way to give a crap. And like Lord of the Rings does it very well. But with this film, I think like Raleigh, maybe it's the actor. He just, to me, was really boring. I didn't find him that enticing at all. it almost felt like all the characters, the supporting characters, were a little bit more interesting than the actual main character. And maybe that's because of his face, his acting style. Who knows? It could be the directing. I don't know. But yeah, I didn't really care about him as, as a hero. I was kind of bored with him on the screen.
Yeah, I think it doesn't help that we also don't get any sort of postscript after, this massive war against the kaiju ends. The film just ends with the helicopters coming in, and Mako and Raleigh embracing each other. We don't see any sort of global celebration taking place. We don't see the fallen Jaeger pilots be remembered in any sort of way. We see the doctors get zero credit for their theory on closing the breach. So again, it sort of makes me go back to that long cut of the film and see, well, did we get that in the long cut of the film? Was that a thing and was just cut for time?
Exactly. We don't know if it's cut for time or they were trying to set things up for the sequels and a bigger universe. I don't know. Maybe they were just going to see, well, if we edit this to where it could just be a one-off, then that's okay. But if there's going to be a franchise, then we'll just kind of leave it ambiguous. But I agree with you. It just kind of ends. It's
Yeah, and it doesn't help either that we get these unsatisfying character arcs either. And I think the most complete arc, I guess you could call it, in the film is Chuck Hansen, the younger Jaeger pilot of Stryker Eureka, but we spend most of the film disliking him.
Yeah.
And most of his development is lost on us by the time he and his father say goodbye, and when they eventually detonate the nuke, when they're trying to get to the breach. So it's...
I know.
Well, what was the point of developing his character as opposed to developing Raleigh or Mako?
I know. Stacker was also Idris Elba's character was just kind of, to me, he just didn't seem realistic at all as a military general. Is the guy they shut down the production facility and then he just shows up in Alaska, and I think Raleigh's well, didn't you guys get shut down funding? And then Stacker's just well, we're gonna do it either way, with or without. And I'm just come on. Plus that boring speech. It's
it's great that he goes full Maverick and tries to go outside of the system and keep the project going for, as long as he can. But ultimately, his final speech, when they're going to go attack the breach, is just okay, cool. It ends on that line, today we are canceling the apocalypse, and we get all the cheers and everything. And there isn't a single person or subordinate of his that speaks up and says, sir, we only have 2 of these Jaegers left. One of them is heavily damaged. How do you expect us to win here?
Exactly. Exactly. Maybe his speech lacked the the onus that the president had in Independence Day.
It could be. The president in Independence Day, I think, is a much more inspirational leader than Stacker Pentecost is, because Pentecost has people above him on that UN council, I think.
Yeah.
Whereas the president in Independence Day, the buck stops there with him. He's making the decisions. There's nobody above him. It's the president and then everyone else beneath him on that that hierarchy there.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Pentecost, just I have all these subordinates under me, and then I ultimately have people above me pulling the strings. So yeah, that's
yeah. He's just
ultimately I answer to them.
Exactly. So it's just kind of I don't know. It would have been interesting to see his character do something else. Maybe if he didn't have the people above him and he becomes this mad dude with power or something, that would have been much more interesting.
And plus we have this suspicion that he's going to die anyway, because he just bleeds from his nose throughout the film. So it's not like we can develop any sort of connection to him, because we know he's just not going to stick around.
I know, it wasn't even epic foreshadowing. It was in your face foreshadowing. He's going to die.
Yeah, when is spontaneous nose bleeding ever good in a film? When? It's never good. It usually means that person's going to die.
Exactly. Did you get any politics with this film?
This doesn't seem like a political film, but I would argue that it's more of an anti-political film.
Okay. Shoot.
We see all of the nations of the world kind of banding together once they realize that our, tanks and planes and all that can't kill these kaijus. We need something bigger and better that'll kill them. So we see all of them banding together, but once everybody sees, the kaiju are getting powerful, and we can't do anything to really stop them with the Jaegers, we're just going to build walls, and hopefully that works.
Yeah, that was so stupid. And the walls don't even work.
No, I mean, you could probably build a wall 10 miles thick, and a kaiju would still bust through it.
Exactly. That was just really dumb, at least in my opinion. Though, kind of relevant for modern times, with hindsight.
Yeah, that we see now that walls don't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you're big and strong enough, you can just go through them, or if you're smart enough, you can just go under them. Like, that's how that works.
Exactly. All right, so I'll buy that, the anti-political route. Yeah, because...
and also, and I think we touched on this a little earlier, where Stacker has to go outside of the box in terms of funding and resources for the Jaeger program, and then forming not so decent alliances in the region with Hannibal Chow and other nefarious black market dealers. But did we see the defense corps he leads, the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps? They're only successful once they kind of step outside the boundaries of that UN control.
Yes, because the UN was limiting in the end, and they decided to put all their chips with the wall, which was just mind-boggling to me for some reason. So I definitely would say I agree with you. This film is very much anti-establishment, anti-big bad military corporation complex, and more so going rogue, being the rebels in Star Wars.
Yeah, just going their own way, and surprise, surprise, they kill a bunch of kaijus along the way.
Who would have thought? So what else has been going on? I don't know. With our trusty director, Guillermo del Toro, have you seen anything recently? I know he did what you call Splash 2.0 with The Shape of Water, but I don't think he's really done anything much since then.
There's been a lot of rumblings, and I think this is what his next project is going to be. He wants to make like a darker version of Pinocchio, more true to life, more true to the actual folklore version.
Okay. So, does it have an evil whale that tries to eat him at the end? Like, I feel like the Disney...
I think it does. The original version of Pinocchio is much darker than anybody really realizes. Where I think the story ends with Pinocchio being hung by a gang of children. I think that's how it ends.
Wow, that is pretty. It's pretty dark.
Yeah, it's dark as hell.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I knew the Disney one as a kid. That was kind of terrifying. Kid becoming a donkey, getting eaten by a whale, all that. That was kind of traumatic for me, but I didn't know it turned into that.
Yeah, those Disney films of the 30s and 40s are oh so dark. More dark than we remember.
Lush with adult humor. But then wait, I wonder if he's directing for Disney, because if he's doing Disney, like they're funding it, then it's not going to be that bad. It'll be dark, but
no.
Quotes.
I don't know if Del Toro has aligned himself with Disney, because it doesn't seem like the kind of director who'd do that, but you never know. I mean, his circumstances could change.
Oh yeah, when you're offered millions and millions and millions of dollars, hey, anyone can roll over, right?
I mean, but it's definitely interesting to kind of look back on the cast and crew of this film and kind of see how far they've come since then.
Okay.
I mean, we mentioned, Ron Perlman and Charlie Hunnam were both on Sons of Anarchy, but they aren't doing much these days, at least from what I can tell. I think they're both kind of... Ron Perlman is doing a lot of these indie films lately and is very politically outspoken on Twitter these days, and Charlie Hunnam is just like, I'm living off Sons of Anarchy residuals. It's all good.
Yeah, Charlie Hunnam, he isn't really done. I mean, he tried to do the King Arthur reboot that no one wanted. Surprise, surprise, it bombed. Oh, darn. But now it's like all the movies he's kind of in are, they're not crap like Bruce Willis's movies he's doing, but they're not that great. They're like more low budget. Redbox.
And Idris Elba, I mean, he's had a great career since then. He's done a lot of voiceover work for Disney.
Oh yeah.
In several decent roles until recently he decided to take a role in the ill-fated adaptation of Cats, which was just a garbage film, just so bad.
Wait, did you watch that? Please, God, tell me you didn't.
No, I did not watch
All right,
that.
thank
no.
God.
I didn't need to see much of it from trailers and YouTube clips to just be like, yeah, I'm okay never seeing this. No, I don't need to see it.
No. I did same. It's the film that no one wanted and no one asked for, but they made it for some reason.
It just looks so weird, and there's so many weird things that have come out since the film was released. I mean, I guess there's some kind of butthole cut with all the cats' anuses still in the film, which I get. It's something that no one wants or should ever see, ever.
It's so stupid. Oh my God. Well, I guess, yeah, there's that for the casting crew. Not, for as successful as the film was, it didn't really bolster a lot of people,
Yeah, Charlie Day is still on It's Sunny in Philadelphia and is doing his quirky, dimwit characters every now and then. Even Bern Gorman he's kind of made a nice niche for himself as a character actor. I think he's been in several major blockbusters playing, tiny characters. He was even on a few episodes of Game of Thrones. So, yeah, not too much in terms of successes for many of these actors following Pacific Rim.
Yeah. Yeah. So, with our show, did you have any, as we always say, do you have any red shirts at this movie?
I had several.
Okay.
But the one specifically I picked out were the two pilots of the Russian Jaeger, Cherno Alpha. And the pilots were the Kadanovskis. And Pentecost, when he introduces Cherno Alpha, he really talked them up and described their abilities with a sort of awe in his voice. And then they were both killed by those kaijus rather unceremoniously. So we really didn't get a chance to see their prowess in terms of kicking ass with those kaijus.
Okay. I like that.
What about you? Did you have a red shirt?
No, not really. It was just so much so fast. So many people died. Yeah, I'm good. I didn't have any that I can recall that really stuck out that I was just like, oh, why did you die? No. Did you have any lens flares?
I had one, and it involves Raleigh and Mako.
Okay.
And it's the scene where Raleigh is defending Mako from Chuck Hansen's insults and hilariously demanding an apology from him.
So stupid.
Mako, we saw she's already a capable fighter with those kendo sticks.
I know.
And him demanding an apology to defend her honor just seems out of place for their relationship at this stage of the film. And in my opinion, Chuck shouldn't have this humility come from Raleigh, but it should have come from the defeat of a kaiju. A kaiju just beats up their Jaeger so much that Chuck just goes sulk in a corner for a little bit and then comes back, feeling better and more apologetic and a better human being. But no, it has to come from Raleigh giving him a beatdown.
It's just so dumb. Just bad writing.
What about you? Did you have a lens flare?
Yeah, so my lens flare, unfortunately, or fortunately, it was the sword. I'm sorry, but the Jaeger, it's like at the end of the movie, their Jaeger is missing an arm, a leg, it's barely going. Then all of a sudden a freaking sword pops out of one of the oldest Jaegers there is. It just starts destroying all the kaijus. And I'm like, all right, where has this sword been all day? Number one. Number two, why don't the new Jaegers have swords? It just seemed like such an ex machina that it really took me out of the film.
Yeah, why not put all swords on all of the Jaegers? It would make it a very short fight if that were the case.
For starters, maybe they made the majority of the film, and when they finally got to the end CGI battle, they're like, crap, what do we do? Well, let's get us out of this hole. Here we go. Let's throw a sword on it. That'll look cool. People will want to buy those action figures.
Yeah, they should have given Crimson Typhoon the 3-armed Jaeger with all those swords. Maybe it would have actually stood a chance in its fight.
Exactly. So that was my lens flare. Also, I know we've been doing this a lot much more. So with no film is perfect, and every film has toxic fandom. So what toxic fandom did you find for this week?
Well, the internet wasn't too bothered by a lot of things in this film, but this one I found the funniest. So, when Newt is trying to describe the physiology of the kaiju, he likens their two brain biology to dinosaurs. However,
Oh,
the
God.
theory that dinosaurs had two brains was abandoned decades ago. And that's where the note ends on IMDb. So, some dinosaur pedant was just so mad that they heard a two brain theory being likened to dinosaurs and just took to the internet to voice their frustration.
I love it. I found a couple, but it's so hard to pick. Oh, man. But I wanted to pick one. So this one is about nuclear reactors. So this person said, by the end of the movie, the nuclear reactor on the Gypsy Danger is compared to a nuclear bomb. For starters, reactors are designed not to blow. Nuclear combustible is different from weapons grade fissile material. Parentheses, uranium rods for nuclear power plants are enriched less than 10%. Weapon grade enriched uranium is enriched more than 90%. So, I guess we have a nuclear physicist here that knows about reactors and all that.
Yeah, that's incredibly specific. It has to be somebody within that field that was just so bothered by the mention of that in this film and just went to IMDb to let everyone know this movie got it wrong.
Maybe there's nuclear reactor support groups that are like, nuclear's got a bad name, man. Maybe. But I mean, hey, at least I learned something and got to chuckle along the way. I mean, there's just so many, like from the bogies to being actually called bandits. I mean, there's so much for fandom. I love toxic fandom.
Yeah, I with a film like this where it is an original concept and it's already done such a decent job of world building, I always find it hysterical when people think, well, that's not really how they would say it. Like, dude, it's a fictional world. Get over yourself.
No one can be happy, Chris, as we saw with the new Star Wars films.
Yeah. Oh man, we saw that.
Well, speaking of like franchises like Star Wars, this film has quite the legacy. They tried to make it into a franchise, if I believe.
Oh, so hard they wanted this to be like a tentpole franchise for Universal and Legendary Pictures. However, it only grossed $411 million at the box office, and this film's budget was huge. It was $180 million. So,
Yeah.
really, your break-even point for a film like this is going to be you have to gross at least $350 million, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it did make a lot of money, but it made up a whole mess of it in home media sales. I read that it made close to $40 million with Blu-ray and digital rentals and things like that, but it did not do well in North America. It opened the same weekend as Despicable Me and Grown Ups 2 and finished behind both of those films in its opening release.
I can't believe it finished behind Grown Ups too. That's hilarious.
I mean, it's weird to look at the box office numbers because it grossed over $100 million in North America and about $310 million internationally.
Well,
So
yeah.
this film was wildly successful outside of North America.
Yeah. Well, we in America, I don't think we really care for big rock'em sock'em robots as we see with like Godzilla films. It just doesn't like catch fire over here for some reason. It's like,
I think a lot of people at the time confused this for a Transformers film. And
oh yeah.
a lot of people at this point in 2013 were just burned out by that franchise and didn't want to give a film like this a chance, especially like, hey, this looks like a Transformers film. I don't want to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of gotten, or I've seen it called like a cult following almost. It's almost, which is weird because usually like films with cult followings are films that don't beat their budget. But this film surpassed its budget, but it's still very much like a cult following, a cult film.
I remember right after this film came out, there was an immediate cry for a sequel. I mean, it seemed successful enough to get one, and then it just labored in developmental hell for a long time before the sequel was eventually released in 2018, starring John Boyega.
Oh, it's
But
terrible.
that film was released to doo-doo stew type reviews, and however, we'll save a more in-depth review from us for another time.
God, I don't want to watch it, but I have to. But it looks bad from what I've seen. But yeah, we'll talk about that when it comes up.
Yeah, but by all accounts, this film was a success. I mean, critically, maybe not so box office wise, but well received on Rotten Tomatoes. The Metacritic score, I mean, it is what it is. It's internet reviews, so take it all for what you will. Nominated for 5 Saturn Awards, including Best Sci-Fi Film and Best Director, but unfortunately didn't win for any of those. There was a video game adaptation that was made, but came out to horrible and awful reviews, and is really, I think a lot of critics point to that tie-in game as sort of the nail in the coffin for video game movie tie-ins. So it's a major reason we don't see a ton of movie-related games anymore, because they're just so terrible.
Oh, they're all awful. It's because they just don't know how to write. You know, it's hard because when you make a video game off of a movie, it's like, do I expand upon the story or do I just copy the story? And then you have difficulties with that.
Yeah, those games can be on such a shortened developmental cycle where you only have maybe 8 or 9 months to really craft and perfect the game before you have to release it. And the games come out rushed, the mechanics are all off, and you're oftentimes you're basing character designs and level designs based on concept art from the film. And so by the time the film comes out, the game is going to look nothing like the final film.
Amen to that. I think that's correct.
So with all that in mind, Sean, what do you say we rate Pacific Rim?
Yeah, that's fine by me.
All right. So on our unique scale for the Force-Fed Sci-Fi podcast of wouldn't watch, would watch, would own, and would host a viewing party, what do you give to Pacific Rim?
Pacific Rim. To me, I ended up being really bored. Like, I really wanted to like this film. The first 30 minutes, I tried to really get invested in it super hard, but to me, it fell flat. Characters weren't really anything of substance. There weren't even that great of acting performances that kind of struck me outside of, Ron Perlman, who's always great. And then Charlie Day was really good too. But outside of that, it seemed very predictable. And I always felt like I was hung out to dry with the characters and just really left unsatisfied. So I would be absolutely fine if I never saw this film again. So I would put this as a would not watch. Let's just hope the sequel might amuse me in an even better way. So I'm good there. How about you?
While this is a fun movie, it's not nearly as much fun as I think it could be. You know, like you said, we don't care much about these characters as much as we care about the spectacle of the giant fights. And while the fights are fun to watch, you can't make an hour and 40-minute film the entirely giant robot / monster fights. It's just not possible. Hey, the character arcs themselves feel rushed and incomplete, while the majority of the main characters just evolve into tropes of the genre. And especially Idris Elba, he's all cheesiness by the end of it, and it doesn't help that the visual effects are now a bit dated by today's standards. However, I think a lot of praise for the film should be given to the attention to detail in terms of the world building and the production design and the use of special effects, both practical and computer generated, were appreciated. But all in all, I would have to call this film a would watch.
Okay. That's not bad.
Good, not great.
Yes. It's entertaining if you enjoy giant robots.
So,
All right.
With Pacific Rim out of the way, what do you say we pick our film for next time?
I cannot wait. Let's go, Major Samantha.
Yes, we're going to enlist the help of our friendly random number generator AI, Major Samantha, to help us select from a list of 118 films. And from that list, she has selected number 116, going deep in the list there. It is Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow.
Woo, man. I haven't seen this since it came out in theaters.
I have never seen it, so I am excited to watch it and digest it.
Sweet. I'm down for this. I'm very excited. Thank you, Chris, for another awesome review. I cannot wait to watch Sky Captain and talk about it.
Yes, thanks for joining me, Sean. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. It really helps to drive us up the charts as well as help people like you find the show. We are across the spectrum of social media with Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at ForceFed Sci-Fi. You can check out and download episodes from Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, or wherever you find podcasts. And go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Finally, you can check out our website, ForceFedSci-Fi.com, for show notes and links to all of our social media. So for all of us at the ForceFed Sci-Fi team, we will see you next time. ForceFed Sci-Fi is written and hosted by Sean Culp and Chris Rupp. Website design, associate producer, and editing by Jeremy Keski. Artwork designed by Mike Berger. Theme music composed and performed by Custom Anthem.